Reading chapters 4 through 14 of the book of Hosea often feels like hitting a wall. The text loops back on itself, themes of sin and judgment repeat, and the entire section seems to lack a clear internal order. This confusion occurs when we attempt to force a modern, linear timeline onto an anthological text. We expect a historical progression from point A to point B. Hosea's prophecies, compiled from decades of preaching, operate differently. When you try to lock this text onto a standard historical timeline, it refuses to fit. Instead of advancing a plot, the prophet circles back to the same specific charges against Israel. Deciphering these chapters requires abandoning modern chronological expectations. We must adopt the specific ancient Near Eastern framework the author actually used to organize his material. Hosea 4 through 14 functions as a meticulously structured legal document. The organizing principle of these chapters is a prominent prophetic genre known in Hebrew as a rib. In English, this is a covenant lawsuit. This genre constructs a formal divine courtroom where Yahweh sits as the presiding judge. Hosea acts as the prosecuting attorney, and the entire nation of Israel is brought to the stand as the defendant. The prosecution's case centers on a breach of the Mosaic covenant, which the text frames through the specific metaphor of spiritual adultery. Every lawsuit in this text operates on a strict three-part morphology. A complete legal cycle includes a formal indictment outlining the crimes, an announcement of judgment detailing the sentence, and a final promise of restoration. Mapping the text through these repeating legal cycles reveals how Hosea organized his messages into three focused, distinct prosecutions. To evaluate the evidence presented in the divine court, we have to look at the ground reality of 8th century BC Israel. Following Jeroboam II's death, the northern kingdom collapsed into an era of total internal chaos. The monarchy fractured under violent coups. A chain of rulers, Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekahiah, and Pekah, seized power through assassinations. Zechariah reigned for 6 months before his murder. His successor, Shallum, held power for exactly 1 month. This violence provides the evidentiary backdrop for lawsuit cycle 1. The prosecuting attorney opens with an indictment. There is no hesed, no covenantal loyalty remaining in the land. The prosecution specifically targets the priests for this failure. They were responsible for teaching the Mosaic law to the people, but they rejected that knowledge. Because the priests rejected knowledge, the judge hands down the sentence. God will reject them. But true to the structure of the rib, the cycle concludes with restoration. God issues a promise of revival, stating that after 2 days he will revive us. On the 3rd day, he will raise us up. In this first lawsuit, the prophet defines the violence in the streets as the direct downstream pathology of religious leaders failing to teach covenant loyalty. Lawsuit Cycle 2, spanning chapters 6 through 11, shifts the prosecution's entire focus toward Israel's political maneuvers and foreign policy. This map shows how Israel's leaders attempted to secure their survival through military and trade alliances. They sent tribute flowing out of Samaria toward the superpowers of Egypt and Assyria. God's indictment rejects these alliances, declaring that Israel established kings and princes without divine sanction. The prosecution points to conspiracies in Gilead as further evidence of this corrupt statecraft. Israel's leaders were relying on human maneuvering rather than their covenant with Yahweh. The judgment for this cycle matches the crime. Because Israel trusted in their own way and their multitude of warriors, the sound of war would eventually arise, destroying their fortresses. Yet in chapter 11, the tone reverses. As the sentence of exile is handed down, God's compassion recoils within himself. The text introduces the metaphor of Yahweh roaring like a lion. In Amos, a lion's roar is a threat to tear the nation apart. But in Hosea, the roar is a signal. It is a booming call for the exiles to return in a second exodus. In the divine courtroom, these specific political maneuvers serve as the primary forensic evidence of a much deeper spiritual defection. Lawsuit Cycle 3 covers chapter 11 through chapter 14. Here, the final formal charge leveled against Israel is historical amnesia. God brought Israel out of Egypt into a land of agricultural prosperity, but as they became full, they forgot God who liberated them. They used promised land blessings to fund their own self-reliance. Because of this forgetfulness, the judgment phase of this cycle is absolute. The judge declares he will weaponize death and Sheol, the grave, against the nation. This leads to the rhetorical questions in Hosea 13:14. O death, where are your plagues? O Sheol, where is your sting? Modern readers often carry a major misconception about this verse because the Apostle Paul quotes it in 1 Corinthians 15. Paul uses these words as a victory cry over death, mocking the grave through the resurrection. But in Hosea's original courtroom context, the meaning is exactly the opposite. Instead, it is a terrifying guarantee that the extreme plagues of death will be fully unleashed upon Samaria without pity. Following this grim sentence, the legal architecture provides a final word of restoration. In chapter 14, God unilaterally promises to heal their apostasy and to love them freely. This final indictment shows a nation utilizing the very blessings of its liberation to fully fund its own spiritual imprisonment, forcing God to temporarily undo their history. The literary structure of the lawsuit eventually collided with the objective reality of ancient Near Eastern history. This judgment culminated in the brutal 3-year siege of Samaria by the Assyrian Empire between 725 and 722 BC. This biblical verdict is cross-referenced by external archaeological records, such as the annals of the Assyrian king Sargon II. Sargon's records document his conquest of Samaria and the capture of over 27,000 prisoners of war, confirming the end of the northern kingdom exactly as prophesied. The fall of Samaria stands as the precise historical execution of the prophetic court's verdict. If the judgment was certain and Samaria was ultimately destroyed, we have to ask why God spent 40 years filing these elaborate lawsuits through Hosea. In ancient legal structures, presenting the case was a desperate attempt to force the defendant to repent before the final gavel fell. These lawsuits were an effort to provoke a return to the covenant. The prosecution proves that divine grace carries an obligation for reciprocal covenantal loyalty, and failing to meet that obligation has tangible consequences. Despite the historical reality of the exile, the structural design of every lawsuit in Hosea insists on the return from that exile. Hosea 4-14 captures a permanent legal tension. The historical reality of the exile was absolute, yet the architectural refusal to end the book at the grave suggests that God's long-term objective is the restoration of the covenant relationship.